I knew the body innately heals. It can't not.
A pocket of energy within myself.
This is for your mother. So just do this for her.
Let's figure out ways that we can actually use pleasure to come together and bring healing.
It's a modality where we go into your subconscious and change some of those limiting beliefs.
I'm Susan Marco, clinical hypnotist, and I have so many friends and people who have had big impact on my life. So I want to share them all with you. Hi, everybody. Susan Marco here with Trance Talks. And today I'm so happy to have Jenine Marie Powell here with me. We met recently at a networking, women's networking group, and I was inspired by her and just felt drawn to her energy. And actually, when I heard what she does, I was like, wow, more people need to know about this. And so I asked her if she would jump on with me, and she was, really happy to do so. So let me just tell you a little intro about Jenine. She's a certified divorce coach. She has some other divorce coaching certifications, but you can read about that in the show notes. And a large part of her focus, her practice, is actually with betrayal and narcissistic abuse, which I know some of you are going to relate to that personally. Other than that, before she became a divorce coach, she was in journalism, and she's got lots of education. And, I won't get into all those details, Jenine, because I think who you are, and when you start talking, it'll be very clear what you bring to the table. So I'm just going to give the microphone to you, and I'm going to ask you to tell our listeners or viewers, what is a divorce coach and how did you end up there?
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for the nice introduction. And I'm so excited to be here with you, and the feelings are mutual. I was very excited from the moment I met you. So thank you for this opportunity. So I am a certified divorce coach, and what led me to this profession, unfortunately or fortunately, was my own painful experience with divorce. About 12 years ago, I went through a divorce that really devastated me. In addition to being heartbroken, I was totally lost. I was overwhelmed. I was sad. I had 2 small children at the time. And it really felt like my whole life had been turned upside down. And even with a great legal team, there's still so much more that goes into a divorce, right? Divorce really affects every facet of your life. And a lot of times, even though divorce is so common, when you're going through it, you feel so alone.
Right.
And like one of the main missing pieces for me was to talk to somebody who gets it, right? Somebody who could kind of understand what I was going through, somebody that could provide hope and encouragement, somebody that could, sort of be with me throughout the process. And as a divorce coach, that's what I do. And as a divorce coach, I mean, there's lots of different ways I help people. Sometimes there's the practical side of it, right? Just explaining what the divorce process entails. Right. And how to get organized for the process, and how to set goals for your divorce, and how to prioritize what's most important for you for the outcome. Right. So there's helping people through the practical matters. But then there's also the emotional side. Right. When people are going through a divorce, this major life change, and sometimes you're paralyzed by fear. You're paralyzed, fear of the unknown. Again, your whole world has been shaken. And when you're in this highly emotional state, sometimes it's really literally impossible to think straight. So that's where I kind of help people with some tips, tools, and strategy to de-escalate the emotions so that they can make all these really important decisions with a clear mind.
Wow. That is, I think it's so true what you say. It's like when we're facing that, divorce, it's all the legal stuff and what's going to happen with the kids and all of those things that having someone specifically who understands the process, I
Yeah.
can imagine can be so helpful. So I have to go here.
Mhm.
Like so you specialize in people who have experienced betrayal and
Mhm.
also narcissistic abuse. Can you share about that?
Sure. So an ordinary divorce is very painful, right? Say if you have a situation where two people have been married and they just decided this isn't working for us, let's go our separate ways. So even when things are relatively amicable, it's still a huge life transition and it can still be really difficult. But if you add betrayal into the mix, or if you add a situation where there was one of the spouses was a narcissist, and I have to use that word lightly because I have to say most people come to me and the first thing they say is, oh my gosh, my soon-to-be ex is such a narcissist. So we throw that word around very loosely. Very few people are actually have that diagnosis. You know, it is a personality disorder. But when somebody uses that word, what it means to me is that they were dealing with somebody in a really dysfunctional relationship. So maybe we refer to that person as high conflict or toxic. Usually when we're both in betrayal and in a situation where there was abuse from a narcissist or a high conflict personality, some of the similarities are that the hit that it takes to your identity, right? Because in both situations, there's some manipulation involved, there's some lies, there's some gaslighting. There's that discovery of, oh my gosh, this person that I was married to, I don't know who they are, right? And that's a very frightening feeling when you make a discovery about somebody, or when you finally have that realization that, wow, I don't know this person at all, right? And this may have been somebody I've shared a bed with for 20 years, and then they behave in a certain way that is so foreign to us that now all of a sudden, this person that we loved, who we thought we were going to have the rest of our life with, becomes a stranger. Right. So whether there were, like I said, some just resulting from a toxic relationship or a betrayal, there's that loss of self, right? Where sometimes we're struggling to get back our own identity. Oftentimes I'm dealing with people who we're so hard on ourselves, right? People who are beating themselves up, like, why didn't I see this sooner? Like there were all these red flags. Why did I stay as long as I did? Why did I put up with this for as long as I did? How come so I think one of the first things is just learning to have grace with ourselves, right? And of course, in hindsight, all these things are clear, right? When we start connecting all the dots. But when you're living through the relationship, sometimes you don't recognize some of these things that are happening. And again, when it comes to light, it's totally devastating because sometimes you just, to put it bluntly, feel so stupid. Like, how did I not see this? Or why did I put up with this? Right. So I think what's specifically when in these two issues is when I work with people is getting their identity back and their sense of self back. Right. And learning to love themselves again, because we are our worst critics and we are so hard on ourselves. So that's a big part of it, specifically at those two areas.
Wow. I'm curious, I don't know why this popped in my head as you were talking, but do you work with people who are contemplating divorce as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not only for someone when they've made that decision,
yeah.
but
And
someone.
that's a big part of my practice. It's the should I stay or should I go?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's, again, when you're having these realizations, are you ready to throw away 20 years or whatever, how many years of marriage, or are you thinking, is there a way that we can work this out? So that's a big thing that people struggle with, the should I stay or should I go? And it's not always that easy, right? And this is what's also frustrating. From the outside looking in, you might have friends or relatives or people who are saying, you like, leave, get out of that. Why are you putting up with that kind of treatment? Get out of there. And it's not that easy to leave. And there's many different reasons for that. There's attachment styles, there's codependencies, there's trauma bonds, there's real life situations, financial circumstances, children involved. So it's not always that easy to go, even though from the outside, It might be, people say that all the time. Why did he or she stay in that relationship for so long? Why didn't they just leave? And it's complicated. It's complicated. So I do work people through that. And I think you would appreciate this for what you do. A lot of it, obviously, I don't tell people what to do, but it's working with mindset. So how can I help them look at their situation differently? Because usually they think they're faced with two awful options, right? Awful option number one is I stay in this horrible marriage. And awful option number two is I get divorced, right? So they think they're faced with they don't like either of those options. So how can we work with them to kind of shift the mindset? So instead of a lose-lose situation, maybe it's a win-win situation, and in divorce, that might be a stretch going win-win, but at least can we make it an okay situation as opposed to the lose-lose?
So I might be putting you on the spot here a little bit, but do you have an example of that mindset shift? Like from what to what?
Yeah. So instead of, if I stay married, my life is going to be horrible and I'm going to be caught up in this abusive situation. Or if I leave, it's going to get a divorce. It's going to be all doom and gloom and awful. So what if you stayed in your marriage and you could make it the best possible marriage that it is? What if there are certain things, and I'm not talking about abuse, but what if there are certain things you could learn to accept about yourself and accept about your partner? And, is your partner willing to do X, Y, and Z? Are you willing to do X, Y, and Z? So is there a chance that if you stay in your relationship, it's not going to be the same relationship because you are going to work on making it a more fulfilling, joyful relationship, right? And be committed to that work. And hopefully your spouse will be too. And on the flip side, if you decide to get a divorce, recognizing that that's not the end of the world, right? And having an open mind and an open heart to all the different possibilities and opportunities that may await for you as a single person, right? And some of the things that you're initially terrified of, you'll get through that. And the personal development that I see happening post-divorce is unbelievable. And so recognizing that there are ways to, right, make the situation seem okay.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Like I can imagine, that there's that when you have to look forward a little bit, right? And you that all the fear and the anxiety that comes up of how am I going to take care of myself? Am I going to be okay? Will I ever have love again? All of those things, to be able to kind of frame it in a way that, all right, I'm just going to be open to the possibilities of what might be here for me.
Yes.
In this. Even when I say it, it's like, it almost it calms the nervous system, right? And allows us to just rest for a minute.
And I love, Susan, I love the way that you said it, right? Just be open to the possibilities, because sometimes, it's so crippling when you're going through divorce. You can't imagine taking those steps yet, right? Because you're still in a grieving period, right? You're mourning, you're grieving. So taking those steps right now might be too scary to take those steps. So I love how you phrase it. Just at least be open to it. And like you said, it's like, okay.
Yeah, like there could be possibility inside of it. Yeah, like we need that balance at any point when we're going through anything difficult. There's it feels horrible right now, but there might be possibility in wherever it's going.
And that's hope, right? That's what hope is, right? Hope and faith. And I think it's also recognizing what you're going through, as painful as it is, that it's temporary. But when you're in the depth of that pain, you can't be out of it sometimes. So recognizing that it's temporary. And I say it all the time. I don't think enough attention is given to people when they're going through a divorce, that this is a loss, right? And I don't want to be dismissive of anybody who's had a partner that they've lost through death, but it is quite similar. There is this big loss, there's this big emptiness, and there is a grieving period and a mourning period. And I think sometimes people aren't aware of that. And a divorced person is pressured to move on quicker than a widow might be, right? Come on, get over it, move on. That person was no good for you anyway. You're going to be better off without them. And so sometimes we say these things thinking it's helpful, But we really need to recognize this person needs a time to grieve and mourn, because there's a loss on so many different levels, right? They lost their partner, they lost a part of themselves, they may have lost their family unit, they may be losing things financially, there's security and stability, there's a loss there. Like I think, like you mentioned, the future plans and dreams. So there's a lot of loss that needs to be processed, and sometimes that takes time. And sometimes we even want to rush through it because it is so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And recognizing that we need to feel that discomfort. It's part of our healing journey.
What would you say is the best way for people who are tuning in right now, who know someone who either is going through a divorce or has just come out of and is in that, grieving period? What would you say is the most helpful thing that people can say or do with loved ones that are going through it?
I think, and it sounds so simple, but just to be there for them and be available, and sometimes just ask them, what do you need right now?
Yeah.
And I heard something beautiful, and I wish I knew where I heard it from. It could have even been from you. I don't know where it was from, but someone just said, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged? Have you heard that? Right? Because sometimes people jump in there to help, and you're not ready for the help, or the help, it's just too much for you right now. So, do you want to be helped? Do you just want to be heard, or do you want to be hugged? And I wish I could give the appropriate credit to whoever said that. But I think that's a big one, right? Asking. Sometimes we just need somebody to sit with us. Sometimes we really do need help, right? Can you help me move out of my house? Can you help me fill out these financial forms? Can you help me find a good lawyer? Can you help me put in touch with somebody in your resource, of some resources that you have available to? So sometimes they need help. Can you watch my kids for 20 minutes so that I can do some really necessary self-care? I mean, that's a big one for parents. I think that practical help me out with the kids, because all of a sudden being a single parent is huge. And sometimes when you don't have another parent in the household, you need that break. But asking somebody, right? Do they want the practical help, or the hug, or just some ears to be able to vent and get it out? So, yeah.
It's one of my biggest lessons. And I'd say even like before I am in this, before I learned the hypnosis and, working with people on this level, one of the hardest things for me to, I guess, accept was that it is enough to just listen.
Yeah.
We don't have to fix it. We don't have to. And sometimes that can actually be abrasive, right? When you're going through this kind of, an event or situation, sometimes you just need to vent. And it's so beautiful to have someone who can hold space for that.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And being able, and that's a gift to letting somebody vent. And then when they're done, being comfortable in the silence. Because sometimes you want to jump in. So I remember, I could say mean things about my ex-husband, but when somebody else said them, I would almost find myself getting defensive, or when and they would think they were helping me by jumping on the bandwagon and say, oh yeah, you're better off without him. He was this, he was that, he was that. But I would take that almost, it would re-injure me. And then I would think like, well, that's that. Well, what does that say about me? If I made a decision to be with this person and you're saying how awful this person is, but I made the decision to be with him. So sometimes refrain from bad mouthing somebody's ex.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't think of that one, right?
Yeah. Well, again, we as humans, we want to help, we want to fix some of us, not everyone, but when you find yourself in that situation, it doesn't always need to be fixed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just needs to be what it is, and it's okay.
Right. And another thing, and Susan, I think you're good at this too, sometimes just recognizing if you have a loved one who's going through divorce or going through anything that's really difficult, and recognizing, this person needs, their nervous system is dysregulated. Yeah. So maybe you can invite them on an activity that might help regulate them. So without them even knowing that, you can invite them, let's go on a walk together. Let's go sit by the beach together. hey, do you want to go spend a day at the spa? Or, you know, so maybe invite them to do something that you know could help them kind of de-escalate the emotions and do something that could introduce that calm that they might need. So
Yeah.
something as simple as let's go for a walk.
Yeah, that's a beautiful suggestion. I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you, just going in a different direction, do you work primarily with women or do you work with men also?
So it's interesting. That's a great question. When I started my practice, I just assumed most of my clients would be women, but I probably see just as many men as I do women. And it's underneath it all, like there's some of the very same basic fears. You know, like you said before, am I going to be okay? What's my life going to look like post-divorce? Are my children going to be okay? What are my finances going to look like? Am I ever going to find love again? Those are universal, right? Male, female, those worries, those fears, those concerns, and that transitioning into something unfamiliar, right? We identify ourselves as part of a couple for so long, and then all of a sudden we're no longer part of a couple. And who are we, right? When we think of our roles, when someone says, you know, who are you? You know, we'll say, oh, I'm a wife, or I'm a mother, or I'm a coach, or right. So our identity is also often tied up with our roles, right? I'm a daughter, I'm a cousin, I'm a sister, I'm a wife. And when you take that role away, so I think, you know, for both men and women, it's a big adjustment period and a big transition. So yeah, but it's interesting because men do need help, you know, and I actually revised part of my website because my website was very inviting towards women. And then I would get clients from men saying, would you work with men too? And so yeah, there's a need for it for sure.
Well, I know, and I didn't mention this before, but you have, you know, your bachelor's, you have one of your bachelor's degrees is in psychology.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, that aspect of how can we, if divorce is the way to go, if it is the answer, right? How do we do it in a way where we can, like, if there are children involved, how do we co-parent? How can we make sure that we split in a way that's amicable enough that it doesn't have a negative effect on the children as well? Because that's a big fear, I think.
That's a big fear. And you know, I could talk about this for a long time. This simple answer is getting in tune with our best self and being our best self, right? How do you want to go through this process with integrity? How do you want to look back on this, you know, process in 5 years from now? And do you want to say, oh my gosh, like, you know, do you want to be proud of the way you know, I went through something really hard and you know what? I handled it really well. And don't you want to be able to say that when it's done, and recognizing that your children, no matter how old they are, they're learning from your behaviors, right? And one thing that I say all the time is you have to love your kids more than you hate your ex. And
Oh, good one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it helps to recognize whatever happened in your marriage, at some point, there was love there. I'm hoping, right? And can we remember that? Because right now you might feel angry, especially if you were betrayed or if you were any kind of other emotional type of abuse or any abuse for that matter. But remembering at one point you two were joined together through love. And can you muster some of that up? And recognize, especially if you do have children, this person's going to be in your life forever. Because you're going to be, it doesn't end. You know, when my marriage ended, my kids were 5 and 10. Now they're 20 and 24. And I still have to have interactions with my ex-husband. And isn't it better for everybody if it can be amicable, if it could be calm, if it could be, you know, sometimes they say you're still a family. It just looks different. It's just your family has been reorganized. And I know that's a hard place to get to. And I struggled because I was so devastated and heartbroken, and I had to deal with anger. And I really recommend people working with a coach, working with a therapist, getting a handle on your anger. What are these emotions trying to teach you and show to you? Because they are raw emotions that are hard to deal with. But recognizing that the bigger picture, right? What do you want for your kids? What do you want for your future? And that level of acceptance. This happened. It might not be what I had wanted or planned for or dreamed for, but this is what happened, and that level of acceptance, and how can we make the best of this going forward? So that forward moving.
Well, I love this conversation, and I really want to thank you for coming. But before we end, I want to ask you, how can people contact you if they need help or they want to reach out to you? What's the best way to get to you?
Oh, thank you. So the name of my company is SOS Divorce Coaching, which stands for Starting Over Single. And I feel like that's exactly what I help people do. So people can go to my website, sosdivorcecoach.com. And on my website, you'll find my phone number and email address. There's actually a form on my website if you want to set up a discovery call, an initial consultation. My initial consultations are always free. So I want people to know that they can come talk to me, no pressure, no obligation, and let's see if we're a good fit to work together.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jenine, for taking the time to come and talk with me and our listeners. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Susan. And thank you for doing what you do. It's so great to be able to bring this awareness to people. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.